Yeah, that's true. Did you know that friendly kids statistically have more friends?
Everyone knows that.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
obvious.
Hey, guys, did you know that most people think they're using the right car seat for their kid, but they're not?
I didn't know that.
Think I knew that.
No, you didn't.
Parents who really know it all know for sure that their child is in the right car seat at the right age and size. Visit safercar.gov/the right seat to make sure your child is protected. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
WNN, with more of what you need to know. Listen for the Alicia Marie Fit Show, a legal, political, and social conversation. Tuesday nights at 7 on AM 1470 WNN.
Outdoor living. It's the heart of the Florida lifestyle. And with propane gas, your backyard is your personal paradise. Whether it's heating a spa or pool or fueling an outdoor kitchen, fireplace, or torch lights, propane adds luxury to your life. And clean burning and efficient propane gas is better for the environment. Learn more at propanefl.com. Fuel your Florida lifestyle with propane gas.
A message from the Florida Propane Gas Safety, Education, and Research Council, the Florida Association of Broadcasters, and this station.
This is Talk 1470. WNN.
The opinions expressed on the following sponsored program are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors. Welcome to the Ask the Expert Show with local celebrity hosts Steve-O and Renee. Sit back each week while Steve-O and Renee educate you with live in-studio experts, such as lawyers, doctors, home improvement, and financial experts in their field. Call in and have your questions answered each week at 888-565-1470. Now, here is Steve-O and Renee with today's expert in their field.
Good afternoon and welcome to another show of Ask the Experts. This is a live show. God, what happened to my voice?
No.
This is a live
Too
show.
much turkey.
Everybody on the holidays do a tape show, not Renee and I. Today's show is live, and wow, do we have a guest on for the next hour. If you've got parents, grandparents, there's so many questions out there that maybe our parents, our grandparents don't like to discuss. We have got, and we can say this, Howard Crooks cannot say this, we have the top
The best.
the best elder law firm, and in fact, they're even called Elder Law Associates on with us today. Before we get to Howard and his whole family, this is going to be a great show.
It will be.
Let me introduce you to my gorgeous, my beautiful co-host.
What's happening?
Happy
Thanksgiving,
which we
yes.
did yesterday. Happy Thanksgiving to all of our listeners. I love the holiday seasons.
Especially since I cook, right?
Of course, you're the best cook. I love you. I love your cooking. I'm not crazy. Did you have a nice Thanksgiving?
Very nice. Thank you for asking. I stood in the kitchen and cooked. Don't worry about it.
Thanks for letting me ask. So anyway, for the next hour, we have Howard Crooks and family. Howard is one of the senior partners with Elder Law Associates. And we want to thank Robin. She put this whole concept together today. It's really a great concept. It's kind of like a round table. Who knows what they have? They're vacationing
I'm looking forward
in
to
Atlanta.
it, yeah.
And Howard's going to kind of do the monitoring today.
Love it.
I know. So let's introduce everybody to the senior partner at Elder Law Associates in Boca Raton, Howard, my buddy Howie Crooks.
Hey, Howie.
Hi, guys. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Doing great. I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. I hope everybody's enjoying their family.
Same to you and your family.
Thank you. So, did you all make the introductions today?
We're going to allow you to do that.
Terrific. So
It's your family, Howie.
On the phone, we have my aunt, Marilyn. We have my mom, Gladys. And we have my cousin, Jeffrey. And we have my cousin-in-law, Howard. And we're going to be talking about the conversation that nobody wants to have. So let me start off with Howard and ask you, Howard, This is something that I get asked all the time by my clients. They come to me and they say, the last time I saw mom or the last time I saw dad, I noticed that their health was really going downhill. And they'll ask me this question, do we need a plan for what comes next? So let me ask you, Howard, if you notice that your parents, and I know both your mom and dad are alive, were starting to experience some decline in their health, does your family have a plan in place for that possibility?
They do. I feel very fortunate that while my parents are divorced and living in different states, they are both pretty financially savvy. And fortunately or unfortunately, I guess if there's a silver lining to this, both had, when their parents passed away,
very bad.
They were left in with very difficult circumstances. It took many years to unravel, and they promised us that they would never leave us in that position. So they have both gone through dramatic steps to ensure that every capacity, every scenario that they could think of has been addressed so that we don't have to go through jump through those same hoops.
So that's a good way. We're starting off on a positive note. Jeffrey, let me ask you a similar question. In your family, do you feel that you've got all the ducks in a row and have planned in advance for the possibility of the need for long-term care?
Mixed answer here. I would say with my mom, absolutely. I think we've done a good job with that. With my dad is in very declining health. He's literally had it all: heart attack, stroke, diabetes, and it's a daily concern of ours to think about that. And I don't think we have all our ducks in a row there. My sister and I are starting to have those conversations to think about what's next. Fortunately, we have a great, my parents are divorced, remarried, and my stepmother is literally the primary caregiver, and she is sort of really the key to keeping my dad going. So thankful to that. But some of those big questions financially, the next steps in terms of just health issues and financial issues, we haven't really addressed all of those. And I'm, thank God I have Howard in my family. And support
I need Howard in my family.
All right. Well, interestingly, you mentioned that with regard to your mom, everything was in place. So I'm going to ask Mom now, Marilyn, how did you and your children address planning issues regarding your estate planning and your long-term care planning? Did you guys sit down and have a conversation? Did they approach you? Did you approach them? How did all that come about?
I'm having difficulty hearing you, but I have addressed estate planning in such a way that I have all the information needed after I pass away in black and white on a paper which says financial information to be used upon my death. And all the information they'll need is written down, and my daughter has a copy of it, and I have a safety deposit box that has a copy of it, and I have some forms ready for them to use in case of medical problems where I can't speak for myself, and also a power of attorney, giving my daughter power of attorney to speak for me.
Okay, and Marilyn, was it your idea to have all of this in place, or did your kids approach you?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Host, can we get a repeat of the question so that Marilyn can hear the question?
So, Marilyn, was it your idea or your family members approached you?
It was my idea. They've never really asked me very much, but I know that it would be a very difficult time for them to be able to look into all these things upon my death. It would be a very hard time, and so I have written it all out for them, and hopefully that will take care of things so that it'll make it easier for them to deal with upon my death.
Okay, thank you. And so a lot of times I'm approached by children who are really unsure how to have the conversation with their parents because they're noticing a decline.
It is
in health.
difficult to have a conversation because it's very depressing and you don't know how to broach the subject. I actually think we need to spend more time on it and look at things and see where things are and make sure that it is clear to them so that they will know without panicking, when it does happen.
I couldn't agree more, Marilyn, and I want to just give our listeners some tips that might be helpful because I'm approached all the time by children who see parents in declining health, and they worry about the lack of planning and the lack of ability to make decisions on behalf of people who later become incapacitated. So one of the things that we want to drive home today is the idea that at a time like Thanksgiving or maybe with the Christmas and Hanukkah holidays coming up, you may want to get together with your family and start talking about these kinds of issues. And it really just takes one or more of you to get together and decide that this is an important enough topic that you're going to set aside some time so that you can address these issues. You might even want to put together a script or an outline of things that you want to cover. One of the things that's really important to do in these scenarios is if you're the children and you're concerned about these issues, make sure that you always show respect and support for your parents and respectful of their decisions and their lives because although you're concerned about how it might impact you, you have to remember that it's still their life and it's still their assets and it's still their decision-making that's being considered here. All right. Jeff,
hey, Howie, can I ask you a question? What is the best way to approach your parents?
I mean, how do you start the conversation?
Right. So what you want to do is you want to obviously approach it very delicately, and you want to say, "Mom, Dad, I'm really starting to get concerned because we live far apart, or if you don't live far apart, I'm starting to get concerned because I'm noticing that there are some things that are not being attended to, and I really just want to make sure that you get all of the help that you need. Is everything okay? Are all of your bills being paid on time? Do you guys need any help?" And one of the things that the children have to be mindful of is that parents sometimes will just automatically say, "Nope, we're doing fine. We're doing fine," because there's a pride issue involved in losing one's independence. So you have to be very tactful in letting your parents know that no matter what happens, you're there for them, you're there to support them, and is there anything that you can do to help them out? And hopefully let them know that when the time comes when they've realized that they need the help, they'll feel very comfortable reaching out to you. As a child, you may have to be willing to understand that if your parents are not ready, there may be very little that you can do to solve the problem, even though you have the concern. But the whole point of having the conversation is to let your parents know that you are concerned, because believe it or not, they may not otherwise know that. They may think that you're just busy with your own lives and that you're not concerned, but you need to let them know that you're there for them if they need you, and let them know of your concerns so that if a future incident occurs, you can point to that and say, "Mom, Dad, this is why I'm concerned, and this is why I want to put these advanced directives in place, and I want to help you out."
Let's tell everybody about your firm here in Boca Raton. First of all, give everybody your phone number.
Our phone number is 561-750-3850.
And your website address?
www.elderlawassociates.com.
And tell everybody the different areas of elder law that you deal in on a day-to-day basis.
Clients will come to me, Steve, with a variety of different problems. I may be approached by a family whose family member has recently been hospitalized, and the hospital discharge worker is now talking to the family about a possible discharge to a nursing home setting. And the family learns for the first time that a nursing home costs $10,000 a month. They wonder, how are they going to pay for that? Are they going to lose their home? So that's one scenario. Another scenario is that the family does not have any advanced directives in place, and the healthcare facility is looking for a decision maker, but the family just does not have anybody appointed in advance to make those decisions. So people are concerned about how to pay for long-term care. They're concerned about how to plan for long-term care. They're concerned about how to qualify for Medicaid. If they don't have advance directives, they're concerned about how to bring guardianship proceedings.
I know
There's so many different areas.
What's really important, what we want the listeners to understand, is there's a lot of attorneys out there that say they do estate planning or elder law, but they also do family law and criminal law. Renee called it a kind of a boutique. This is all that you do, is elder law, estate planning. This is what your firm does. And instead of going out there and Googling somebody who might not be as up to date, as knowledgeable, that does this on a day-to-day basis, Elder Law Associates is the finest. When it comes to elder law and estate planning, you guys are it. So no matter if you're in Broward or you're in Palm Beach County or if you're in Martin County, let's give them your phone number again before we go on.
561-750-3850. And at this point, Steve, if I can, I'd like to ask my mom to help us out with something, because there's advanced planning that people can do.
Okay, Howard, would you repeat the question to your mom? Here she is.
So this question is for you, Mom. Mom, you had approached me about 2.5 years ago about what would happen if there was a need for long-term care, and would Medicaid or the nursing home take all of my assets? I'm curious to know what prompted you to think about that.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you just said. It's not coming through clearly over the telephone.
And Steve, can I get a little help here?
Okay, so...
Oh, I can hear the MC, but I can't hear Mr. Crooks.
Okay, so what prompted you to, I guess, come to terms that you wanted to make sure that everything was handled properly?
That everything was set in place.
We went over everything with my son, and everything is in place now.
No, initially, what prompted you to put everything in order to make sure everything was taken care of?
Well, my son and I talked about it, and I realized that these things needed to be done. And we started with the health proxy and the living will and the irrevocable trust. And I'm very satisfied with the way things worked out.
How much did this put you at ease after this was all kind of taken care of for you?
I'm sorry, could you please repeat?
Did this put you at ease knowing that everything was taken care of, everything was in place for your family members? She likes my New York accent, probably.
I guess she didn't hear that.
No, I didn't.
Did it make you feel better? Did it put you at ease knowing that everything was in place for you, that your family members would not have to handle these things?
Mind at ease. Yes, everything's in place.
Okay, perfect.
All right, so one of the things that listeners should be aware of is that if you take the time to plan your estate well enough in advance, it does give you the peace of mind of knowing that if anything should happen down the road, your affairs are going to be well taken care of by your kids.
And that should be before you have any health issues.
For sure. It should be before you have health issues. What happens if you have health issues and you haven't done anything? That's when you're going to be subject to a guardianship, and you're going to have to go to the courts to get a legal guardian appointed for you. And that's something that you really want to try to avoid, because it's much more costly and time-consuming, and you also have to disclose all of your financial affairs to the courts through a guardianship proceeding. It's much, much better if you sign your advance directives, such as a power of attorney, healthcare proxy, and living will far, far in advance.
So let me just ask you something, Howard. Does that mean if you do that in advance that there's no guardianship that's required at that point?
That's correct, Renee. If you have your advance directives done in advance, then you will not have to worry about guardianship. I'm going to ask Howard a question. Howard, if you had to take over either your mom or your dad's affairs, would you know where their advance directives are located?
Yeah, we like I said, we are very fortunate that my family has taken steps to ensure that we know where everything is. We have data drives that have all that information on them. They also have hard copies, and I have combinations to their home safes, and I have signing privileges for their safety deposit boxes. And we've, while the conversation always starts out a little bit morose when you're discussing end of life or illnesses or other long-term issues, I will say that at the end of the conversation, we were laughing and we're very comfortable with the fact that the things were going to be handled the way they wanted them to be handled. And to add, one thing that gets a little bit where things begin to get murky is my parents divorced when I was 10. They both remarried, both got divorced again. One of them is now remarried for the third time. So now you're dealing with a spouse who is a lovely person who we consider to be one of our family, but you do run into issues with, whose assets are whose and how do you divide all of that up. So I think once just putting it all in one place where everybody is on the same page and there are legally binding documents so that all of a sudden things don't change and down the road or when someone becomes incapacitated. I will say that both of my parents felt a great level of comfort in knowing that their affairs were in order, especially as they've reached, both my parents are in their 70s, and they're at a time where they're seeing some of their friends who are becoming ill or passing on, and they witness the problems that can and how it can really rip a family apart when financial issues and asset divisions become part of it, and you have people who are partially involved in businesses, and it becomes very confusing. And I know of several instances, just personally and anecdotally, who are families who've been kind of ripped apart, especially by wealthier people who everybody wants to get their hand on some of that money.
We see that all the time, yes.
Problems.
Thank you. And Jeffrey, in your family, you mentioned that your dad has some medical issues and he's remarried. How does that work? Does his wife handle everything, or are you ever called upon for advice? How are you involved in your dad's caregiving?
His wife is the primary caregiver, and a lot of the decisions, at least with regard to his, well-being and the health aspect, is absolutely with his wife. But I have to be honest, it's the sort of end-of-life planning, the things that you've highlighted in this discussion, we haven't really had some of those tough discussions. And, no time like the present, I think it's a good reminder. And I even extend it to, my sister and I just had a conversation just even about us. Like, I live in Chicago. She lives in Atlanta. My dad is in South Carolina. There's different locations, different, it makes it more difficult, I think, to have some of these. We get together on an infrequent basis, but that's not an excuse. I think it's a good reminder to all of us that while there is precious little time that we get together as a family, these kinds of conversations, albeit difficult, are paramount and should be taking place right now. So it's a good reminder to me that I need to sort of, I think, insert myself more proactively in this, because there's been, I think, a reticence to have these kinds of conversations recently. And it's something that I'd like to be more proactive with. And you can bet after this call.
Well, I think a lot of people don't want to broach this topic because they don't want to talk about or think that their parents are ever going to be pass away. So I think a lot of people don't even want to have this conversation, and it's actually a very important conversation to have, and especially based on the fact that, Howard, you said if these things are not taken care of, to have a guardianship, which is something that you don't want to deal with.
Correct. And Jeffrey, let me ask you this question. You mentioned that your stepmom is the primary caregiver for your dad. What would happen if something happened to her unexpectedly? Where would you and your sister be in terms of becoming the sort of the obvious go-to people to step in and provide for his caregiving?
Yeah. I think the good news is that we we have a great family relationship, and there's a lot of respect, and there are good intentions in what we would absolutely step up. Do we have all the tools or answers or knowledge or information if that happens suddenly? Absolutely not. I think we have a learning curve for that. We lack some of that information, but we're a close family, and we would absolutely get it done. But I think the back to the theme of this is that we haven't prepared ourselves sufficiently. I think we would be stepping into that process a bit without some of those preparations that we should have already done. And it's a good reminder to me that we need to start having some of those conversations so that we're not taken by surprise. When I see my parents, my dad's health is in such it's declined to the point when I see him, I always wonder, could this be the last time I see my dad? If I'm seeing him, 2 or 3 times a year. So there's nothing more critical than spending that time, and I think honestly having these conversations, because it's just too critical. No one wants to be surprised, and you're so emotional when that happens. If there's a passing, if your parent passes on, there's you're disoriented. So to be prepared for it in advance is critical, and I think it's something that I need to act on.
Yeah, and one observation here is that sometimes families without divorce and remarriage have difficulties having these communications and these conversations. It can become infinitely more complicated when you throw into the mix multiple families with varying interests and competing interests, as well as who's going to take responsibility and step up to the plate if somebody can no longer provide the caregiving. These are very, very dicey issues, which is why they're so difficult to address and so difficult to even confront to begin with. My hope, though, is that people will, hearing this today, realize that not doing anything at all about it is worse than the difficulty of having the conversation in the first place. So here's another tip that you can use to help your family out. If you are the person whose finances we might be talking about and whose health we might be talking about, if you could get together all in one place, all of your relevant information, and there are checklists and forms on the internet that you can use. Our firm uses one and gives out to all of our clients, where you can list all of the people that you work with, accountants and lawyers and brokers, doctors, and so on, and all of their contact information is listed, as well as the location of all your estate planning documents and any information, email addresses, digital assets as they're called, all can be accessed in one place. If you do that, you will show more love in one act than you may have in a long time to your family, because the failure to do that will result in your family running around trying to put the pieces of a financial puzzle together, which is very, very difficult to do when you don't have any insight into the location of these documents or the whereabouts of this information. Okay.
Hey, Howard, can you just talk a little bit about revocable living trust? Because
Sure.
I understand, are you for those, or how do your feelings on the revocable living trust?
So a revocable trust is applicable for people who want to achieve 2 goals. The first one is what we call asset management in the face of incapacity. So if you become incapacitated and you want to make sure that somebody else has the ability to manage your assets, if you have a revocable trust, then you'll have a successor trustee named in the document who automatically steps into your shoes as the trustee and can manage your assets. That's better than having a power of attorney in place, because the bank already has a copy of your trust and they already know who the successor trustee is going to be, instead of a power of attorney walking in off the street one day, presenting a document that may be 10 or 15 years old, and then they have issues of identification or staleness of the document. So that's one reason to do it. The second primary reason to do a revocable trust is avoidance of probate. Why do people care about avoiding probate? Well, in some states, you have to publish in 2 consecutive weeks in a newspaper the fact of the death and give creditors an opportunity to come forward and file claims against your estate. and then there's a 90-day creditor period, and that delays the distribution of assets in the estate. If you had all of your assets in a revocable trust, you wouldn't have that kind of a delay. So for those two primary reasons, people like revocable trust. It may not be appropriate for everyone. You should consult with your attorney to determine whether it's appropriate for you. And I would also mention that a revocable trust is different than an irrevocable trust, which is something that people do to protect assets from Medicaid, because a revocable trust is exactly what it sounds like. It's revocable. And if you try to apply for Medicaid with assets inside a revocable trust, those assets will be counted for Medicaid purposes and not protected.
Okay, let's go to break, and when we come back, we have more with Elder Law Associates and Howard Crooks.
We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Steve-O with the Ask the Experts radio show. Join my co-host Renee and I every Friday as we interview some of the most prominent professionals in Palm Beach and Broward County. Each week we combine educational information on a variety of topics with a touch of humor and entertainment in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement so you can be more informed. We offer interviews on such topics as family law, foreclosure defense, estate planning, sleep apnea, roof repair, funeral pre-needs, mold and mildew, alcoholism addiction, and even a show that teaches you how to buy a new and used car from one of the top dealerships in South Florida. If you have a business and would like to be part of the Ask the Expert show, contact us at 954-336-3767. Position your company as an expert in your field. Call Ask the Experts radio show at 954-336-3767. Be sure to catch our show every Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. or watch our show live at wwnnradio.com and click on the WWNN TV link.
And we're back.
This is the holiday season. I love this. Like kind of like a round toast, probably a long.
And I love that's all the family
I know.
members. That's really nice.
This is, you can hear it right from relatives, you know.
Well, the expert, Howard Crooks is certainly the expert in this field. And it's such an important topic to discuss.
I would have never even thought this.
Because everybody is affected. I mean, everybody has parents that unfortunately get ill or end up in a nursing home or, suddenly pass away. And these are things that need to be addressed before they get sick.
And Howard, my question is, we're hearing more and more today about the elderly with dementia now. So what do you do if some, like an older relative is starting, you can tell, the dementia? What do you do?
Sure, Steve. Earlier you mentioned the importance of doing this while you're healthy. People do not realize that the onset of dementia means that they think it means that you can't do your documents, which is not true. Even with the onset of dementia, you can still do your planning as long as the person still has a requisite level of mental capacity.
And who determines that?
Well, initially, it'll be the attorney who determines that, because the attorney has to be able to establish a lawyer-client relationship and has to be able to be sure that the person understands the nature of the documents that they're signing. If the lawyer has any question about that, the lawyer may defer to a medical professional, a doctor, a neurologist, for example, or a primary care physician for the individual who's in a better position to make the medical assessment as to whether this individual has capacity. So anytime there are capacity issues, at the end of the day, if the attorney feels uncomfortable making the decision him or herself, then the attorney will likely defer to the medical professional. I've had circumstances where a doctor has written a letter stating to me that notwithstanding a diagnosis of dementia or Alzheimer's, in the opinion of the doctor, this individual has the requisite capacity to execute advance directives that may be needed in order to effectuate their estate plan. But so the first order of business is, when you're healthy, do the documents. But if you're the kid and you see a decline in memory and dementia issues presenting, the first thing you need to think about is, I've got to get these documents in place so that I don't have to go through the guardianship process, which is, as I said earlier, a long and drawn-out proceeding. You can get these documents signed much quicker and far less costly if you do it that way. So I'd like to address long-term care insurance, and If we could have Marilyn or my mom on the line to address a question about long-term care. Long-term care insurance is essential to planning your estate because if you have the insurance in place, then instead of assets on the needed care, the insurance policy covers needed care.
The reception is very poor. We can't understand what you're saying.
So Steve or Renee, can I ask you to please just ask my mom or Marilyn if either one of them has long-term care insurance, and if the answer is yes, well,
Okay, so do either one of you have long-term health insurance? I believe the board app is on the phone with them right now because I think there's a reception problem. So let's talk about long-term health insurance. At what age do you recommend people getting that?
well, most people end up getting it either in their late 50s, early 60s before the onset of any health issues.
And it's cheaper then, right?
It's much cheaper, and you can certainly get it into your 70s or even, I've heard as high as 84 years old, people buying the insurance, but it's far more costly at that point, and therefore difficult to sustain because once you're into your 70s and 80s on a fixed income, it becomes much more challenging for you to be able to buy the insurance.
Howard, what does that typically cover?
These days, the insurance policies will cover any level of care, whether it be home care services, assisted living services, nursing home services, really whatever level of care that you may require, the insurance policy will cover today. But the big issue with long-term care insurance is the daily benefit amount. For example, if you have $150 a day of coverage, but it costs $300 a day to reside in a nursing home, you really only have half coverage at that point. You're going to have to use your assets to pay the other half.
And how about Medicare?
Well, Medicare, a lot of people come to me, and I'm glad you asked that question, Renee. A lot of people come to me and say, well, I have Medicare, so aren't I covered? And it's a misperception. Medicare only has limited coverage for a nursing home. If you required skilled nursing care, and that's an important hoop that you have to jump through first because not everybody requires skilled care, then you can get 100 days of Medicare coverage in the nursing home. But once the 100 days are up, you're not going to have any more Medicare coverage in the nursing home. You're going to rely on your own private pay funds, or if you're fortunate enough to have a long-term care insurance policy.
Wow. So what happens to elderly that don't have savings in that case? I mean, this is really an important factor to think about. That's why you should really get long-term health insurance. Because most people think that Medicare covers that.
Yeah, it's correct. Most people think Medicare is going to cover them. That's the thing. That's the be-all, end-all. When you're retiring, when you turn age 65, age 67, whenever you decide to retire, you're looking at Medicare being your comprehensive health insurance. But what they don't realize is that it does not cover long-term care in a nursing home.
Wow.
You know what? Doesn't your office do seminars every so often?
Yeah, we do have seminars in the South Florida area on many of the issues that we're talking about today, Steve.
Anything coming up in the future?
We just did a round of seminars in November. I think we're going to take the month of December off for the holidays, and we'll be back in action in January.
Okay, and we'll let people know.
Well, people could go to the website and look for the seminars as well.
Yes.
Give everybody your website address.
www.elderlawassociates.com.
Yeah.
So I have a question now for Howard. Howard, if you found that your mom or your dad was struggling with driving and you felt like they really shouldn't be driving any longer, there have been a couple of incidents, thankfully not involving any damage to human life, but the car has been damaged and you're really starting to get concerned that something very serious could happen. Tell us, how do you think you might approach your parent about that because of the concern that you have over something very serious that may come down the pike?
Well, it's a tough question, and it's also made compounded that my parent, I don't live in the same city with either of my parents. They both live, one lives 500 miles away and the other one lives 1,000 miles away. So you get into issues of not just that, but they're living their lives. But of course, to take away the ability to drive is a huge smack in the face in terms of their freedom and what they're able to do. I had a friend. I met a friend this weekend, and we were talking about that very subject. That his mother had been approached by some con men that she had won the Publishers Clearinghouse, and they had bilked her. And this is a normally pretty bright woman. She's probably in her early 80s, but she fell for it hook, line, and sinker, and it's cost her over $25,000.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. And so they actually packed her up and moved her to the city where the son lived. And that's where you get into issues, because typically if somebody's losing their capability of driving, that's either a physical, a visual type of situation, or a mental incapacitation. I think it's just a precursor to other issues that they're going to be facing. And again, I feel fortunate that I have a pretty open relationship with my parents, but I have witnessed, I'm in the travel business, and I see people who, once they reach a certain age, and of course that age varies by person, but they begin to become very nervous about things, and they're unsure about it, and they think that everybody, and sometimes including their own children, are out to take advantage of them. And so it's important.
That's very prevalent.
It is, and it's very scary. And we again, because just being in the industry we're in, we see a lot of family issues and people having differences of opinion. We have cases of people who will send their parents off on a trip who do not have the capacity to handle all the intricacies of traveling internationally. And so in many cases, we require them to travel with someone who can manage them while they're away from their home. And so the answer is, I think you have to be honest with them. I think that's, as Howard has been talking about throughout this whole process, is to discuss that while they're still in a position of being able to understand those decisions. And you're explaining to them with tact that, we don't want anything to happen to you. We certainly don't want you to cause, harm to another person, and head down that road and act accordingly.
And Stephen and Renee, I want to just address a couple of stories that I've been involved with clients, just to highlight how some things can go wrong. I had a family where there was a strong disagreement over whether mom should go into the nursing home and whether the assets should be used to pay for the nursing home, costing about $10,000 a month. And there were no advance directives in place, and nobody really knew what mom's wishes would be in this regard. So the son and the daughter were at odds with each other as to what was the proper course of action for mom. And because they didn't have any advance directives or any kind of instructions or blueprint based upon conversations amongst the family in advance, they were in litigation through a guardian proceeding, both seeking to be appointed mom's guardian and both wanting to make the ultimate decision here. And the courts ultimately had to decide what was in mom's best interest. That's a very costly way for family decision making.
It really is.
And so it's very unfortunate, because the other thing that it does is it creates a huge divide within a family.
Right.
That divide probably existed long before this circumstance arose, and what we find oftentimes is some very deeply rooted family issues come out really at the end of life for the parent, and they play themselves out in court. But that's why...
But that could have been avoided.
All the reason why it's so important for the parent. So those of you that are thinking about these issues now and listening to us today, take the time to talk to your kids and to your spouses about what your wishes are in these kinds of circumstances. Failing to do that is not going to make the problem go away. You're still going to have to deal with these issues, albeit in a slightly different fashion than you might have envisioned. Now, I also want to point out that even when somebody takes the time to do these documents, there can still be some problems. I am working with a daughter right now who's been appointed under all of her mother's documents. Mom has Alzheimer's, and so she's not able to make decisions for herself any longer. And mom did have the forethought to appoint her daughter, but she did not appoint her son. And her son is now starting to stir the pot and ask questions about, Mom, where are your finances? What's going on? I don't like the decisions that my sister's making for you. And he's bringing her to banks and financial institutions trying to gain access to monies. But fortunately, because Mom took the time to sign these documents in advance, I've been on the phone with all of the financial institutions and the healthcare providers, and we've been able to reinforce the fact that legally the daughter is the proper decision maker here. They have all the documents that they need to substantiate that claim, and we now have them documenting their records, their computer records, as having a conversation with me, the elder law attorney, so that if there's any problem down the road from the son, where he brings his mom into one of these financial institutions, or he starts to mess with her medical care, they know and they have it documented that they're not to listen to him, and that he's just meddling in places where his mom has asked that he not intervene.
And obviously there was a reason.
What's that?
I said obviously there was a reason that she assigned a daughter.
Correct.
And eliminated the son.
Correct. And she clearly trusted the daughter. And I have to tell you, I've worked with the daughter now for a number of months, and she's really been a pleasure to deal with and somebody who strikes me as being on the up and up. So Mom saw that too, and, she made the right decision. But the point is, even when you do these documents, there can be some problems, and this is why it's so important to have the conversation, because in this case, I doubt the conversation was had on the assumption that the son was not going to take too kindly to Mom's choice in appointing only the daughter. But you see how it manifests itself when you have family members and they're not all on the same page. Cousin Jeffrey, I'm going to ask you a question. If anything were to happen to your mom or to your dad, would you have any idea what their wishes are in terms of things like wanting to be buried or cremated, or do they have existing burial plots, have pre-arrangements for these kinds of things been made? Do you have any insight into that?
Some insight. With my father in particular, I unfortunately lost a sibling many, many years ago, and there is absolutely a plot next to my brother who is deceased for my father. For my mother, I don't, but I know that my sister is absolutely informed on all those. My sister lives in Atlanta. My mom is 5 minutes away. My sister really is fully informed, I think, on those things. But again, it's a bit murky. It actually extends to our generation. Like, I have no idea. My parents don't know my own wishes. Like, if God forbid something happened to me, they don't know my wishes. I haven't gone through the process, so it extends beyond the parent level to the child level. Do I want to be buried next to my dad? Do we have a plot? Do we have even the ability? My sister is starting to ask me those kinds of questions, so it extends sort of family-wide.
I think that's a great point, Jeffrey. We're talking about what happens as you age, but the reality is that some terrible things happen to people well before they become of advanced age. And Howard, I know you just had a friend who was 53 and suffered a stroke and passed away, unfortunately. So really, for all of us, we need to be thinking about what kind of documents do we have in place, and how much of this have we shared with our family members to be sure that they know what our wishes are. Steve and Renee, we haven't really talked about Medicaid and how that fits into this puzzle. In order to qualify for Medicaid, people need to understand that there's a very small asset limit of $2,000 in most states. And that's certainly the case in Florida. And if you don't plan to qualify for Medicaid, your assets are going to be the first place where the nursing home looks for the spend down of assets. And the problem that people don't understand exists with Medicaid is that it is a program that only pays for certain types of services. And unfortunately, there's something called an institutional bias in our Medicaid system. And what that means is that Medicaid, for the most part, only pays for nursing home care. There's very limited help for assisted living level of care, or if you need an aide in the home to deal with such things as doing the laundry and preparing meals and driving to doctor's appointments.
Does it cover that?
I'm sorry, Renee?
Does it cover any of that?
There is limited coverage, and it varies from state to state. but there's a long wait list for those services, and sometimes it takes upwards of a year before your name comes off of the wait list. So if you think you're just going to qualify for Medicaid and be covered for these kinds of services, you're in for a big shock when you learn that the only place you can get those services for sure is if you go into a nursing home. And I've never met a client who started out a meeting with me saying, if I need the help, I want to go into a nursing home. In fact, quite the contrary. If I need the help, please keep me in my home.
Right.
I don't want to go into a nursing home is what they will say.
God, there is just such a long laundry list of things that you have to know. I'm like, it's mind-boggling.
It really is, and this maybe, Steve, that may be a reason why so many people don't really get around to addressing it, because there are so many different points that you have to cover in order to make sure that you're covering everything. And it's hard to do this long distance. So if everybody lived around the corner, it might be easier to do. But even in those circumstances, I find that families have not taken the time to really sit down and say, how are we going to approach the aging process? How are we going to approach long-term care planning in this family? Who's going to be the primary decision maker? And that raises a whole other host of questions when you have multiple children. How do you decide who's going to be the primary decision maker for you? Most parents like to pick equally, so to speak, and appoint everyone, but that may not be the best choice to have everybody making the decisions all at once. You typically would like to have a primary decision maker and then an order of succession after that. But, the most compelling reasons to do all of this planning is for the people who are aging and for the family members. It's going to give them a number of things. It's going to give them security and peace of mind, and they're going to have far more choices by doing this advanced planning than if they just leave it to chance and let the chips fall where they may.
No, I agree.
I would, after listening to the show today, I would be so afraid just to sit down with my family to try to map this out, because you need someone.
That's
like
why you
Howard,
sit down with Howard. That's
because
exactly
there's so
it.
many things you might forget about.
That's exactly. And something, Howard's licensed in New York and Florida, so you have to mention that, because that's an important factor. Because there's a lot of parents that have come down to Florida and retired, and the family and the children still live in New York, so you could handle everything for them here.
That's correct, Renee. I actually split my time between New York and Florida, and I found my clients really like the idea of being able to talk to me about the available services and the planning that one can do in New York and Florida. So that's an important point. One of the things that we haven't addressed is the house. That for many people, the house is the most substantial asset. And there are things that you can do to protect the house, such as using an irrevocable trust and putting the house into the trust. There's that 5-year look-back period that people need to be aware of. But if you do that, then the house will be protected and it will not have to be sold and the proceeds used to pay for the long-term care of the individual.
Yeah, you don't want to get involved with probate, do you?
Well, probate, Steve, probate doesn't scare me, but it does scare a lot of people, and that's the reason why we were talking earlier about the use of the revocable living trust. If you have your assets titled in a revocable living trust, you will not have any probate issues to deal with unless you forget to put an asset into the trust. And just having one asset outside of the trust entitled individually in the person's name will require the probate process to be gone through.
Oh, gosh. Okay. But it is important that someone sit down with someone like yourself. So, every stone is unturned.
No question about it. And Steve, here's another thing. People think they're doing a good thing if they put all of their documents in a safe place like a safe deposit box, but they don't realize that when they pass away, nobody has access to that box.
It's frozen.
So that's another detail that needs to be thought through. You need to make sure that you have a child whose name is on the box and who has a key to access the box, or you need to come up with some other secure location for the placement of those important documents, and you need to communicate to your family members where those documents are, because it's of no value if they can't find it when they need it.
No, those are all important factors.
Let's give everybody your phone number again, Howard.
Sure. 561-750-3850.
And tell everybody where your office is located.
We're at 7284 West Palmetto Park Road in Boca Raton, Florida. And I will mention, Renee, that we also have offices in Aventura, Weston, and West Palm Beach, as well as the New York office that you mentioned earlier.
Perfect.
And you've got such an incredible website, www.elderlawassociates.com. I mean, there's so much great information on there. And when you do have these seminars coming up, is that on your website?
Yes, you can look on our website for future webinars, Steve. Absolutely. And I do want to mention, talking of our website, that my wife Robin is responsible for all of the great information that you can find
She's
there.
done a wonderful job, Howard.
Today's, you can actually go back and watch today's show just by going to www.elderlawassociates.com. You can watch today's show as well as past shows that we've done with Howard.
All right. Any other questions for me?
You know what? The most important thing is, if someone didn't learn today how important it is to sit down with an attorney like yourself.
And it affects everybody. There's
It does.
nobody that it does not affect, because everybody has a family member that's going to be incapacitated and you'll have to take care of them, or needs to have a will set in place. So it's really important that people
you
get
don't
all their
wanna miss
ducks in a
anything.
row. Exactly.
So listen, we have loved, again, having you on and your whole family today. Everybody did such a great job. Again, the name of the firm is Elder Law Associates. Thank you, Howard, so much, and your family for coming on today. And we will see you again next month.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you both.
That's Howard
you all.
Crooks.
Thanks, guys.
Senior partner. And there's so much great information out there to learn. And we will be back on Monday. Everybody enjoy the weekend. It's good seeing you.
It's good seeing you, too.
No, it's really good seeing you. No, we've got a tasting to go to tonight for Renee and our other company that we do. Listen, thank you so much for listening today. Without you, there is no us. Peace and love.
We're out.
Hi, I'm Steve-O with the Ask the Experts radio show. Join my co-host Renee and I every Friday as we interview some of the most prominent professionals in Palm Beach and Broward County. Each week we combine educational information on a variety of topics with a touch of humor and entertainment in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement so you can be more informed. We offer interviews on such topics as family law, foreclosure defense, estate planning, sleep apnea, roof repair, funeral pre-needs, mold and mildew, alcoholism addiction, and even a show that teaches you how to buy a new and used car from one of the top dealerships in South Florida. If you have a business and would like to be part of the Ask the Expert show, contact us at 954-336-3767. Position your company as an expert in your field. Call Ask the Experts radio show at 954-336-3767. Be sure to catch our show every Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. or watch our show live at wwnnradio.com and click on the WWNN TV link.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Experts show with Steve-O and Renee. Tune in every Friday from 4 to 5 p.m. while some of the top local experts in their field from Broward and Palm Beach counties educate you in the areas of law, health, financial, and home improvement. You can also call our offices at 888-574-6999 to become an expert on our show. The opinions expressed